Hi everybody, welcome back to Papagei English. This is the first part of our fourth session, and in this session we're going to talk about true, false, not given, and yes, no, not given questions. Now, before starting the course, again, I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and if you like my videos, like them and leave your comments. All of them will help me to improve the quality of my courses. Now, let's start our today's session. True, false, not given. Now let's start with our tips. Tip number 1. This task type asks you to look at statements and decide if they agree with the information in the text or not. True means the information matches what the text says. False means that the information is contradicted by the text. And not given means that the statement is neither confirmed nor contradicted. Not given statements often refer to ideas that are mentioned, but not enough information is given for you to say if it is true or false. Tip number 2. Not given statements are often based on information you might expect to be in the text, but isn't, and often use words that do appear in the text itself. Read each statement and the relevant part of the text very carefully before deciding whether the ideas are given or not. Make sure you are clear who is being referred to in the text. Tip number 3. True, false, not given questions are often in the order, more than 90% of cases, but there might be some exceptions. We always assume that the questions are in order. Now I have a good news for you. These questions, true, false, not given, and yes, no, not given questions are easier compared with heading and locating for information questions, because these questions are in order and finding the relevant part of the text would be easy for these kinds of questions. But please be careful that sometimes in true, false, not given questions you have to escape some paragraphs, but again the questions are in order. And also be prepared for a little surprises in your exams. There might be cases in which the questions place might be a little bit unusual, but the IELTS test is a standard test and you're not going to face strange things in your IELTS exam, and this is the scenario you are more likely to face in your IELTS exam. Now let's just start our example. Now let me turn on my pen. The first thing, as usual, we need to do is just to look at the title to know what the passage is about. The number 2, to choose the signals or our keywords. But in these questions, we only look at 2 of our options, and we're not going to select all of our keywords because these questions are in order and we don't need to do that. And finally, find our keywords in the text and read around them carefully in order to answer the questions. Now let's start our example. Do the following statements agree with the information in reading passage 2? It's reading passage 2 and it's going to be a little bit difficult compared with reading passage 1. In boxes question 19 to 21, true, false, and not given. Now let's just look at the title. The Falkirk Wheel, a unique engineering achievement. Falkirk Wheel, a unique engineering achievement. It's about something about the wheel. Okay. Now let's go back to our options and choose our keywords for a tool of our questions. The Falkirk Wheel has linked the Force and Clyde Canal with the Union Canal for the first time in their history. These are the names and easy to scan in the passage, so you can take these as our keywords and scan them in the passage. Now let's go on to the second one. Question 15. There was some opposition to the design of Falkirk Wheel at first. Some opposition to its design at first. Now let's go back to the passage and look for our keywords. Falkirk Wheel, it's just at the start of the paragraph, and also scan the passage, the Force and Clyde Union Canals. Now let's read around them carefully. The Falkirk Wheel in Scotland is the world's first and only rotating boat lift. Okay, it's important first. Opened in 2002. It is central to the ambitious 84.5 Millennium Link project to restore navigability across Scotland by reconnecting historic waterways of Force and Clyde and Union Canal. Now that's important, and here the word reconnecting plays the decisive role. Reconnect is key to answer. Now let's go back to our question. The Falkirk wheel has linked the Force and Clyde Canal with the Union Canal for the first time in their history. But in the passage, we have reconnect. Reconnect means that to connect for the second time, and as a result, it's not the first time. So we can conclude that this is the false statement. Okay, this is false. But you can check this in this paragraph as well. If you are unable to answer and recognize the reconnecting, you can check this and you can check this paragraph in order to find the correct answer. Now let's continue and read this paragraph. The major challenge of the project lay in the fact that the Force and Clyde Canal is situated 35 meters below the level of the Union Canal. Okay. Historically, the two canals had been joined near the town of Falkirk. Okay. Historically, the two canals had been joined near the town of Falkirk. A sequence of 11 locks, enclosed sections of canal in which the water level could be raised or lowered, that stepped down across a distance of 1.5 kilometers. This had been dismantled in 1933, thereby breaking the link. But when the project was launched in 1994, the British Waterways Authority were keen to create a dramatic 21st century landmark which would not only be a fitting commemoration of the millennium, but also a lasting symbol of the economic regeneration of the region. And as you see, before the year 2002, these two canals were connected historically, and then we had other projects in 1963 and 1944. Now let's go back to the next question. Question 15. There was some opposition to the design of Falkirk wheel at first. Okay, but in our passage, as you see, in 1994, the British Waterways Authority were keen to create a dramatic 21st century landmark. So the British Authority were keen to create this project, and there was nothing about opposition about the project. So this is not given a statement. Now let's go to other next set of our questions. The Falkirk wheel was initially put together at the location where its components were manufactured. Okay, initially put together where its components were manufactured. We're going to look for something about manufacturing. The Falkirk wheel is the only boat lift in the world which has steel sections bolted together by hand. Steel sections and also bolted together by hand. Now, let's go back to our passage. Just skim the passage and find the relevant parts that we need to look for finding our answers. Okay, I'm gonna skim it just by my eyes. Okay, in this paragraph, the various parts of the Falkirk wheel were all constructed and assembled. I found constructed and assembled, and I'm going to read around these two keywords carefully. The various parts of the Falkirk wheel were all constructed and assembled like one giant toy building set at Papagei Engineering Steelworks in Derbyshire, some 400 kilometers from Falkirk. Okay, now let's go back to question 16. Initially put together at the location where its components were manufactured. And as you see, it was constructed and assembled like one giant toy building set at Papagei Engineering Steelworks. Now, that's correct. That's exactly what the passage says. So this is true. Now, let's look for question 17 and look for our keywords, okay? Just look by your eyes. Okay, I had bolted back together again the ground and finally lifted into position in 5 large sections by crane. The wheel would need to withstand immense and constantly changing stresses as it is rotated. Now, I'm a little bit confused about this. Now, let me read it carefully around the bolted back. A team there carefully assembled the 200 tons of steel. I have the steel, it was one of our keywords. painstakingly fitting the pieces together to an accuracy of just 10 mm to ensure a perfect final fit. In the summer of 2001, the structure was then dismantled and transported on certified warehoused concrete before all being bolted back together again on the ground and finally lifted into position in 5 sections by crane. The wheel would need to withstand immense and constant. Okay, as you see, there is nothing about bolted together by hand. There is nothing about hand. Okay, we have about concrete wheel and its steel sections and how they are connected together, but there is nothing about whether they have done it by their hand or not. So this is not given. Now let's go to our last set of questions. The weight of the gondolas varies according to the size of boat being carried. Okay, it's about the weight of gondolas. The construction of Falkirk wheel site took into account the presence of nearby ancient monument. Okay, an ancient monument and weight of gondolas. Now, let's go to this slide and just look for our keyword gondolas and just skim the passage. Okay, I find it and I'm gonna read around it carefully. 2 diametrically opposed water-filled gondolas, each with a capacity of 360,000 liters, are lifted between the ends of the arms. These gondolas always weigh the same, whether or not they are carrying boats. Okay, it's about their weight. They always weigh the same, whether or not they are carrying boats. Now, let's go back to question 18. The weight of the gondolas varies. No, it's not varies. It's the same. And as a result, this is false. Now, let's go back to our last questions. It's about a monument. Now, I'm gonna skim the passage and look for a monument. Okay, just even you can pause the video and sing for it for some few seconds. But I'm gonna skim and find the monuments or something about the history. Okay. Okay, historically, I find the word historically here. Historically important Antonin Wall, which was built by the Romans in the 2nd century AD. Now let's read around that carefully. The wheel could not be constructed to elevate boats or a full 35-meter difference between the 2 canals. Okay, that's a restriction for a wheel because of these Roman monuments. Now, let's go back to our question 19. The construction of the Falkirk wheel site took into account the presence of nearby ancient monument. Okay, that's true. Now, let me give you an explanation about this slide. Now, as you see, we skipped this paragraph, and in this paragraph, there was nothing which was related to our true, false, not given questions. But again, the questions are in order. These paragraphs is about other sets of questions. In our final session in this course, I'm going to give you a complete explanation which sets of questions answer first and how to approach in different situations. So don't worry about that we have skipped this paragraph. We're gonna talk about all that in our last session and give you the tips in order to act in different situations and how to select different sets of questions in IELTS reading. In IELTS reading, you would have around 3 or 4 and sometimes 2 sets of questions in each passage. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Let me turn off my pen and go to the... Okay, that's the end of part 1 of our 4th session. I hope it would be useful for you. Again, I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel on YouTube and like my videos if you like them. See you later.